Okay, we are live. We are joined today with Spooky Nukies. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Superpower Broadcasting. I'm Kevin Castley. There will not be a premiere today. Instead, I'm going to be covering the riots unfolding in D.C. currently. And we are joined by Spooky Nukies. We might also be joined by some other people in short order. How's it going, Reese?
Well, you had to start with the best guest. It's really all downhill from here.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
200%. But
yeah, that doesn't mean we haven't actually done on the channel in a while. We've had, not to make light of pretty serious sort of thing, but on the point of the memes, we've actually had quite a few memes recently. Like, that's the one thing about YouTube. Like, when I get the analytics, I'm actually generally impressed by the degree of detail that they give me, even though I'm not like a partner or whatever. But they don't show memes per hour, like original memes per hour. That it's like, because forced memes. That's right. A new one. That's a new one. Post physique. That one, even one of his friends was like making fun of him over that. Post physique, bro. That was hilarious. That's a new one.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose we should be serious for once. We should be serious commentators.
No, I know it's funny because I was looking around to see other people that were streaming to see what their takes were and stuff, and like everybody's kind of making a joke of it, basically, from what I could see. So.
Well, to a degree, it is kind of funny in the way that anything can be funny. It's also really terrible, and there's reported injuries in DC. I don't think there's any reported deaths yet.
But there was one. Somebody was shot in the neck.
Okay, that might have been one of the ones that was originally an injury and worsened. But I really don't know. It's hard to keep track of it all because there really is a lot going on. But I've done my best, and I don't know. Maybe. For the people who don't know, like the two people who live under a rock, how about you tell them what we're talking about?
Yeah, so essentially right now, the thing is, I only woke up
telling members of Congress to shelter in place. Okay,
that's CNN. I was gonna stream share or like basically screen share over to CNN so that we can get their reporting on it. I only woke up a little while ago and I was like, well, I've got a lot to do. I got a bunch of cleaning to do. I've got a debate later against the Tulsi Gabbard ban, and I got to get the premiere done. And then I see all this crap happening. I'm like, oh, you know what? We will not be doing the premiere today. We're going to be doing this instead. And I don't have that much in the way of detail on it. So it'd probably be better at this point to let CNN do the explaining. We'll go over to CNN's site. So we've got here pro-Trump mob storms U.S. Capitol. This armed standoff takes place outside House chamber. Supporters of President Donald Trump have breached the U.S. Capitol, and one woman has been shot as one of the most iconic American buildings is engulfed in chaos after Trump urged his supporters to fight against the ceremonial counting of the electoral votes that confirm President-elect Joe Biden's win. So that's the thing. Essentially, the House certifies the election, or the Congress certifies the election, and that was taking place today, and you had a bunch of the most radical Trump supporters come out, and they're doing what's called the hashtag Save America rally, where they go in there. I know, where they go in there with their guns and cause a mess. And at this point, the thing about this that was the most interesting was when I was trying to get info on it initially. There was reports that the National Guard had originally been requested to be activated in D.C., but the Department of Defense declined it because the National Guard in D.C. would have been taking the orders of the president, and they would have thought of that as a conflict of interest. So they deployed the Virginia National Guard instead, which doesn't answer to Trump because they see Trump basically as a threat to national security at this point. So
basically all the headlines that were like, oh yeah, they excluded the Virginia part. They just mentioned that the DC National Guard wasn't going to be mobilized.
Yeah.
And then you had a lot of people saying, oh, they're basically using that to further their BLM Antifa narratives, and that's retarded. No, it is a legitimate national security concern. When you have, I mean, the guy, ostensibly, you're fighting against the president and his supporters. You can't really fight against the president, though. It doesn't work out so well. So, yeah, no, that's it's a clusterfuck, man. It is an absolute clusterfuck.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I guess, to kind of like give an overview for anybody who might have not have also realized what happened last night. There was a Senate runoff election in Georgia that saw both of the Democratic candidates win, and I think that that's largely kind of provided a bit of a momentum with this, because this would have happened anyway. With this sort of circumstance, except that I think the Democrats taking both chambers in the Capitol as well as the White House, it really kind of it's made a lot of Republicans really angry. And I was pointing out last night when we were covering it, basically, like, look, the Republicans would have won Georgia if it wasn't somebody like Trump in power. Like, Georgia would still be a red state if Jeb Bush was president, for example. So
yeah, most likely. But the thing is, like, it's easy to say that, like, oh yeah, you should have gone for Jeb Bush. It's almost a meme at this point. People are like, you should have clapped for Jeb. You could have had Jeb.
Yeah, but like unironically, he would have taken out Iran too.
But they don't want Jeb. They don't like they despise Jeb. They see Jeb as one of the archetypal enemies of Trump. So of course they're not going to want a Jeb. And he'd be running in Florida probably anyway. But
yeah, that's true. But like, they voted for his brother. Like, that's the thing. A lot of these Trump guys are old.
But they voted for his brother like 20 years ago.
Yeah,
like lot. The country has, and the parties have changed drastically. A lot changes in a year, let alone 20 years. And no, it's not. It's a very different group of people with very different values. And there is a noticeable split in America's conservative base in terms of who, the kind of conservatives that they would support. Would they support, Donald Trump Jr., or would they support David Frum? Both of those people are technically conservative, but they are about as different as someone who would vote for Bernie and vote for Biden. Honestly.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, I think the point about all this, like, we got the gun sharks saying, well, your neocon renaissance idea is shot. It's like, no, it's not. This is what it takes for people to realize that the Trump brand is a losing brand. Like, I mean, it's been pointed out by other people.
This strengthens the neoconservative movement, honestly.
Yeah, no, like, because the thing is, think about it. There have been people that were making the point that when it comes to Trump, it's easy for an anti-establishment candidate to win an election. It's a lot harder for when you're all about, oh, I'm against the establishment. Now you've been president for 4 years. You basically are the establishment. A lot harder to keep that ground. Whereas what the people want at the end of the day, I think, is a winner. Will there always be some paleocon type people that are going to die hard stick to Trump no matter what, even as the brand is totally dead in the dirt? For sure. But the majority of just average GOP voters, they want somebody who can get dubs. And Trump has taken a lot of L's lately. And if you want to take dubs, you should probably get somebody like Nikki Haley or Dan Crenshaw instead of this. So, but we got White.
This is a losing brand because it's so alienating. Like, it doesn't speak to enough people to ever win, which is funny to me, because I was seeing people like Ian Chong the other day talking about how, man, there's never been a politician like Trump. Have you ever seen someone energize crowds like him? And all I could think was, I'd expect someone who's like, it's the same thing people used to say about Bernie, like, he's the most popular politician in America. If Trump really was like the most energetic and like exciting politician, why has he never won the popular vote? Why not? Wouldn't you expect the most popular politician of all time? He's not Reagan. Like, it's ridiculous, man. Well, it's completely, that's what happens when you live in a bubble. when everyone you talk to and know is a Trump supporter, if you're like Dave Rubin and you're like, man, I'm in California, but I saw all these Trump signs. Trump must be popular. You're a retard. Like,
Yeah, but
that's not logic. That's dumbassery.
see, the thing is about Ian Chong is like he quote tweeted me the other day. Wyatt and I were talking about this. So like, it seemed that he was making fun of some like anti-war brainlet that was making a case for Gaddafi being overthrown, but not Saddam because of laws.
Yeah, I saw your video.
Yeah, that one. The thing is about him is like I'm not really sure which side of that he was coming from. Was he?
He's completely. I think he thought the hypocrisy was probably weird, but he's an anti-war person. So
yeah, he's anti-war. That's why it was funny to me. I'm like, wait, is he making fun of the guy for defending Saddam but not Gaddafi, or is he making fun of him for liking one? Like, but you're right. He's probably thinking like, this is a dumb reason. You probably should have also supported Gaddafi. Maybe I'm not sure, but anyway, we do have Wyatt here. So, what's your sort of perspective on all this, Wyatt?
I don't know. The whole situation's frustrating. Of course, like the idiots storming the Capitol are being morons. Just to say that in the most roundabout way possible. But what's sort of annoying about the whole thing is people sort of like taking the people storming the Capitol and they're sort of like running with it in like all of the wrong directions. You get the really weird sort of mega cultist type people acting as if like, oh, they had it coming because they didn't investigate the election properly. They had this coming. And at the same time, people are like, well, if they didn't challenge any of the results, then this would have never happened, as if it's like your fault for like wanting to go over what to go over the election processes and whatnot, which I sort of find frustrating as well. And then you get other people who are now like, oh, like people who have literally supported BLM riots in the past are now saying, oh, see, this is what you get with Trump. I'm like, this is what we get with you too. This is so silly. I don't know. It's like there's a whole web of things. Like I would still hold Trump accountable partially for probably not outright at the start of the thing saying, do not go near the Capitol building, do not break down any fences or whatnot. But at the same time, it's sort of silly when people are saying, oh, he wanted this. I'm like, really? He wanted to have to call in the National Guard like 5 minutes later? Like he clearly knows that it wasn't going to accomplish anything to go and like cause violence at the Capitol. And clearly he did not want that. He's not dumb enough to want people to break in.
Yeah, I think
maybe not that, but he wanted people to show up, and
he definitely did.
That's going to lead. It was never going to stay completely peaceful. He can't be that dumb. I don't buy that. I don't buy that he didn't know that something was going to go down today.
Well, my justification for him there would be the fact that the last the Million Mega March that happened in December or November, I forget when, that one went off pretty much without a hitch, and the only violence was pretty much just Proud Boys and Antifa beating on each other at night. Yeah. That one was, I think they were thinking, well, it's sort of the same sort of event. And I get, like, the problem is, too, I think it's more so optically he should have covered himself by tweeting, definitely don't do any violence, be peaceful, because they're, like, showing photos of the people who broke into the Capitol building, like, finding tattoos on the people showing that they're clearly, like, white supremacists. They're not your typical mega crowd type people, because all those people are mostly standing outside the Capitol building, just, like, sort of sitting there with flags, which was sort of the Million Mega March thing. And now these people probably would have done it anyways, but just, you know what I mean, from the optic standpoint, it frustrates you. It's like, if you want to run in 2024 and win, you should be making sure to cover yourself really well. Now you can have a rally, you can, like, look good, to make people feel like you had a good case in 2020, and then you come back in 2024 and win. But when you don't cover your bases, like, rhetorically on being peaceful, people can then cut commercials about you in 2023 and 2024 to undercut you.
Oh, they don't even need to edit anything necessarily. It's the erosion of democratic institutions. And it's what people were fearful of in the last election, which he won, which was surprising. But people were very convinced that Clinton was going to win and that Trump wasn't going to concede that. This is an even worse situation because he's an incumbent and he's not conceding. This is what happens when you don't give up your power and you happen to have a very dedicated and rabid base. Yeah, not all of them are white supremacists. That's fine. There's some of them who are, and there's some of them who are outside who are crazy in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah,
Look at
well, the one thing that
signs people
annoys,
are holding.
the thing that really annoys me is that all the people who show up with like the Nancy Pelosi banners, and I don't like Nancy Pelosi at all, is all the people who come to these rallies often, and not everyone who shows up to the rallies, but I think I bet there's a clear correlation between people who show up to rallies and protests all the time in every country and people who fail to email their local representatives and fail to make phone calls and fail to sign people up to vote and fail to go and vote themselves. I feel like that's a big thing. So like all the people who are complaining like, Warnock and Ossoff won in Georgia. I'm like, well, all the Georgians who left to go to this rally probably didn't vote, but they're going to be they consider themselves probably Trump's biggest supporters. And that's just what I hate in politics in general, is that I show up to all the events, I show up to all the rallies, I yell the most, I slap the Fight for 15 hashtag bumper sticker on my car. I wear literally a MAGA hat when I'm like working at a non-political organization for no reason. That means I'm a better supporter than you. I hate that crap.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that there's a large contingent of people on the radical side of both, that mostly on the left these days, that don't even really believe in voting. Like a lot of the Antifa type people, they basically, they want to be a part of something where they smash stuff, but they don't actually like vote. You also have a lot of that with people attending these big demonstrations and stuff for clout, but they won't vote either. And it's the sort of thing that when it comes down to something like what we saw in Georgia, you actually had people that were like big Trump fans that refused to vote for the Republicans there because they basically saw them as not loyal enough to Trump or whatever, which is really dumb. And with the margins like we saw, I mean, a few tens of thousands of votes matter, and swaying 1 or 2% of your base away, like what was that Lynn Wood person or whatever? It's definitely not beneficial to their side in that sense. But.
Guaranteed, I bet Lynn Wood tries to start his own like news organization, own media company, or tries to run for something.
Yeah. I mean, when you've got over 1 million followers on Twitter and your whole thing is QAnon, and the whole conspiracy theory is like Q is in basically the deep state and talking to you and your buddies on 4chan. It's kind of a mess, but
what I find really really funny about the people who believe in stuff like QAnon or just any conspiracy theory, left or right, is that half the time it's like, oh, Trudeau is Fidel Castro's son, and I'm like, okay, what would that actually change? Even like, let's just say that somehow that's even like remotely correct, even though it's just impossible. Let's say that that's true. What does that change? And they can never tell you what that would actually change.
Oh yeah,
I mean, same thing with the QAnon people. It's like, this person once shook hands with like Jeffrey Epstein. I'm like, what does that actually do? And they're like, well, he shook hands with him, and Jeffrey Epstein's awful. And I'm like, okay, that's crazy, man.
Donald Trump and Epstein used to hang out and what?
Yeah, and we all understand that it's nonsense. But yeah, like we all understand that that's nonsense. But people are so dumb. They're like, you'll see people on the left saying, "Oh, he once hung out with Epstein," and that will be like trending on Twitter for 2 days. And then like Lynn Wood comes out like, "Oh, John Roberts once was on like Epstein's plane or something like that." Like, I'm not even sure if that's true, but it's like, okay, did he commit a crime? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, no, we got a guy in the chat. This Logan dude says, you guys sound like some snowflakes. You guys should move to China. And he's a Trump supporter.
Yeah, I think we're the most
yeah, like we're the most anti-communist China people you'll probably find on YouTube these days. Oh man, like I had some guy commenting the other day saying like, what's up with all this neo-McCarthyist stuff? Like basically the Russians didn't do anything wrong and all this kind of thing. And it's like, okay, well, it's like that's part of the problem is like, you know, because the enemies of the U.S. definitely enjoy this kind of chaos going on. Like when you have people storming the Capitol building, obviously it's something that makes Putin and winning the flu very happy. So,
Oh yeah.
Well, one good thing that comes out of the protests is I expect people, it becomes just like a political tradition to completely distance yourself from the type of people who storm the Capitol, anyone who's just this unhinged hyper populist, that people will start to like actually define their beliefs better, and they're not just, oh, I'm just generically for the people. Even I guarantee you, even if Trump runs in 2024, his actual campaign probably will not be featuring any of these types of supporters.
yeah, well, I mean,
he's distancing himself kind of from them now, so I wouldn't expect him to do that. But I do think you make an interesting point about kind of the vague movement for the people. Because I don't know if people know, there's this account called Liberty Hangout. What am I talking about? You all know what it is. But this account exists. It's not for any kind of liberty, but they were obviously in favor of this. And I found it so funny because they featured 2 tweets from them, and they were spaced like a half hour apart. The first tweet was, you know, we don't believe in democracy. We don't believe in the Constitution. We are fighting for Donald J. Trump. And then the second tweet was, Donald J. Trump is a coward. He won't come out and support us. And I think that kind of sentiment, to me, it represents that, yeah, Trump is, people want to a degree, Trump has control over the movement, but also he doesn't. It's kind of a similar like Bernie situation where if you're not in lockstep, you'll get kicked out. It doesn't really matter who you are. The movement goes beyond the whims of Donald Trump. And I think that a lot of the people who are like, okay, well, he's getting out of office, so that means we don't have to worry about this anymore, are painfully wrong. I mean, the genie is out of the bottle. I don't know what to tell you, but this kind of very, you know, anti-democratic, I want to take things by force sentiment, right-wing populism, it is not dying with the end of the Trump administration. Either he'll run again, or one of his kids will run again, or some other shitbag will run again.
Honestly, the nice thing about this is I feel like this at least polarizes most people in the U.S. against all foreign countries that want any influence in the United States. You know what I mean? Where I feel like not a lot of people are going to be super big fans of anyone sort of interfering, because now people are very hyper aware of just the avenues that they do that through, like influence over elections, hacking, and whatnot. But even if, like, to a certain extent, these people should calm down, because I still like a lot of Donald Trump's policies. I just wish he was a little bit more hawkish on certain countries, like overseas, and like he wouldn't pull troops. But at the same time, it's actually not that bad to have him in for 4 years, and then you get a Democrat in for 4 years, and then you actually get to see that same president you had before in for another 4 years, because you actually get a good look at what you had and what the other side was offering, rather than these 8-year chunks that people sort of define as just, you know what I mean, where if it's an 8-year chunk, people can just say, oh, it was awful for 8 years. But if you have 4 years with someone else, and then 4 years with the previous guy again, then people actually get to compare and contrast better. And I think that's good for Americans to actually see what the differences are. Because if it's just 8 years, people just sort of think of it as just one moment in time.
Yeah.
It's almost an argument for shorter term limits.
Well, Reagan got 8 years, and people remember that as like a golden era for the United States. And in a similar way, like a lot of Democrats probably look back on Obama and see that as like kind of like golden era or whatnot. But I think it can depend. I mean, obviously, if you're getting 2 terms, it's kind of definitely a symbol that like people really kind of support your agenda. But I mean, there's nothing. That's the thing that's dumb about this is like there's nothing stopping Trump from running in 2024. But this kind of stuff, by and large, is gonna like the extent to which you distance yourself from the radicals is what's going to make or break his chances in 2024, because it's like you can't win an election on having like a 25%. Even if they're the most big, like the biggest supporters in the world, they're still limited in number. That's not going to get you the White House if everybody else thinks that you're like anti-democratic or whatnot. But here's Liberty Hangout says, watch what happens when 74 million angry patriots stop backing the blue. We have been posting positively about monarchy for nearly 6 years now, and everyone thought we were crazy for it. Look at what's happening to our country now. Still think making Trump our king is such a bad idea. What the hell do we have to lose? By the way, these guys have the anarcho-capitalism colors in their head, which like they sound more like neo-feudalist primitivists in many ways than we got.
Yeah, they're monarchists, theocrats. They're not libertarians.
They encompass every ideology on the right that I find super cringy. Every single person, for some reason, like every cringe lord on the right is either like an ANCAP. They're a monarchist who, for some reason, won't shut up about the fact that wouldn't it be great if we had a perfect ruler and he could do whatever they want? Like, yeah, that would be nice. It's not going to happen. Or I think the only other one we're missing here.
The Nazbols and stuff.
It's just I guess just all sorts of paleo cons, but I guess that sort of starts going in towards ANCAPs because that's just that's just sort of like the paleo conservatism at its worst. But yeah, they've somehow combined the two cringiest right-wing ideologies, which is monarchism and anarcho-capitalism.
Well, that's the thing. Like these guys are
basically Mad Max.
Yeah, like he says, I want Donald Trump to declare himself a king today. Democracy has failed us. The thing is, it's like, okay, but they're self-proclaimed libertarians as well. So they're libertarian monarchists. So I guess they want a king to preserve liberty, I guess, is their kind of way of looking at it, except they don't actually like, because that's the other thing that's funny about this is like there are a lot of extreme crazy ideas on the right that actually kind of have that horseshoe theory entanglement with the left. Like, I mean, the Nazbols are the most obvious example of it, where they look at Hitler and then they look at Stalin and they're like, yeah, it's hard to pick. Why not both, basically? And you got these guys where they're anarcho-capitalists, but they also really, really, really want an authoritarian absolute monarch. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of.
Hey, I just noticed on Twitter, I had some girl clap back at me when someone, like, there was reported that Turkey was saying that they want moderation in the U.S. or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Power. And I just tweeted back at the announcement that it happened that I hope that Turkey stops running people over with armored trucks. And then this girl claps back by saying, "Can America stop supporting racism and terrorism?" Also, she spelled terrorism with a Z.
With a Z, no, she actually did. You know what's so funny about this is like, okay, try looking up what the Turkish state has done to Kurds for the last 50 years. I mean, you want to talk about racism and stuff like that? I've got the tweet right here, the string of tweets. Just in, Turkey declares all parties in the U.S. to use moderation. What response? Yeah, could Turkey stop running over people with armored cars? Thanks. Can America stop racism and terrorism? Thanks. As if Erdogan and his regime haven't been butchering Kurds. Well, and it precedes Erdogan. I mean, that's something that goes back decades.
The people storming the Capitol, in terms of like violence, would be a good day in Turkey.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Turkey, that's one of the things about Turkey is they used to have this sort of social contract where if the leader got out of hand and went in an excessive direction, the army would literally just do a coup to restore the secular democracy that they had until Erdogan came in, and then the army failed at it. But the whole time, even when Turkey was a democracy, we lost Reese. Even when Turkey was a democracy, they would conduct massive amounts of just nationwide racism against Kurds, discrimination against Kurds, bigotry against Kurds. Oh, but America's the real problem. America's like the home of racism, right? So
I don't know. I always hate, yeah, I always hate that when it's like you'll bring up something that's actually a serious crime, borderline genocide, and they're like, yeah, let's just even pretend that their characterization of America is like right, that there's just the America like supports racism or like terrorism. I'm like, that's even if that was true, I'm pretty sure the claims of like America supported terrorism is nowhere even close to running over people with like trucks, supporting the terrorist group the Grey Wolves, killing Kurds,
Yeah.
invading their territory. Like all of the random little like conspiracy theories of groups that America has funded and that attack like our allies or other people. That doesn't even amount to like what Turkey does in like 2 months.
No, I know. Like, what terrorists? What terrorists does America fund? And I know they're going to say, yeah, but America funded Al Qaeda. It's like, yeah, bullshit. Give me a citation to like.
Oh, it's just that stupid like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, where you once gave firearms to this group that was doing like that was fighting the Soviets, and there's this tiny group that split off from this other tiny group that turned into Al Qaeda. That means you're responsible. Like that's insane. That's like if I don't know, like I put up like a fire alarms in my business, and then it burnt to the ground and killed a bunch of people because I didn't foresee in like 120 years everyone was going to be only 3'2". That I don't know. That's the worst analogy I could possibly come up with, but it's just all this like silly like how was I supposed to know that like that 3 degrees of separation was going to happen over time and a group was going to become a terrorist organization?
Well, yeah, and the other thing that's dumb about it, and I've argued with people on this before, is like, I still don't believe that the people that gave assistance to the Mujahideen were dumb and didn't think that something might happen in terms of blowback later on. Like the way that the academic establishment always talks about it is like, well, this is what happens. This is blowback, and they should have known better. It's like my guess is if you were to ask those people at the time that were working with the Mujahideen, they would say, yeah, some of them might become terrorists and work against us at some point. But we've got a country that's got 40,000 nukes aiming to bury us, and that's kind of a bigger problem, bro. So we'll deal with the blowback down the road. Otherwise, we won't even win. And then we won't even have a country to deal with the blowback. That's probably where they were thinking. But the way that the Noam Chomskyites would like to portray the U.S. Government is always bumbling around, not like, oh, let's just give money and funding here, and then look at that, 20 years later a few of those people turned out to be against us. It's like, yeah, but that's still lesser evil. Even that, as bad as it is, it's still lesser evil to the Soviet Union, which
these people are never good at even defining
half of America in like 6 hours was what the Soviets were able.
Well, the funny thing is too is that people they'll take two contrary positions when it comes to like the U.S. supposedly funding terrorists. Is that they'll pretend there'll be like 9/11 truthers where they're like this was all planned. They wanted these terrorists to eventually attack the U.S. But at the same time, like for some reason they were planning that like 30 years in the past. And at the same time, it's like, oh, the U.S. is funding these terrorists to like either kill people or make an excuse for them to like go for oil, or they're like doing it to attack our own allies. It's like no, it's like there's contrary positions where they're funding terrorists because they want the terrorists on the ground for U.S. interests, but then they can't explain why U.S. interests include terrorist attacks on U.S. citizens. Because like for some reason, despite the U.S. funding these terrorist organizations, they're not very good at like leashing them so that they don't attack the U.S. as well.
Oh man, we lost Reese again. It might just be an internet issue with him. Yeah, we've got Nick Peter here says, oh, there he is. There he is. Come on. There he is. Okay, yeah, we'll go to Reese. It's been a little bit since we heard from Reese.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was having a little little hiccup right there. I don't know. I'm probably not going to stick around too much longer to be honest. I see a comment from Progressive Apostate, who of course we know. He said, as they've repeated ad nauseum, there was no election issues at all. Trump promoting the idea that the election was stolen definitely fed into this. Oh wait, no, he said something else. Hold on. I'm like totally lost. Okay, so yeah, the main problem is Trump propagating the idea that the election was stolen. That was the catalyst that led to this. Yeah, I mean, like that's the
the needle in the haystack. Really, it is the central cause for all this, and that's why people are upset. So, in terms of what Kevin was saying earlier about people seeing Trump as a loser, so that might kind of damage his brand. I think that he, say what you will about Trump, he's kind of shielded himself against that, because he can't be a loser if everyone is set out against him. If the entire world is against poor Donald Trump, then he can't be a loser. So people will think, well, yeah, I don't know why they would think if it would be worth pursuing anything remotely democratic if the entire system is rigged against you. But that is this to me represents the true danger of populism and undermining of the democratic institution, because what you do is you foster an entire generation of nihilist douchebags who think, well, what's the point? What's the point of me participating? What's the point of me voting? I'm just going to go, beat my chest and take over shit. And, people are going to all day and pretty much all week, you can expect a lot of the Dinesh D'Souza types to be like, well, yeah, but what about these other people? What about BLM? What about Antifa? Okay, fuck those people too. That's not important right now, though. This is what's happening. And I mean, BLM, they've done some heinous shit. They haven't done something like this, though. They haven't done something as symbolically victorious as this. Something that would kind of shake the nation to its core and make America seem weak to its enemies in this way. This is a major step backwards. And I expect to be dealing with right-wing populism all my life. I don't expect it to go away. There's going to be somebody else. Trump will run again. One of his kids will run again. Ted Cruz might shift to be more paleo-conservative and actually succeed in running for president. You never know with these types of people. But I expect to deal with it again. I don't expect for it to go away. But I do expect that this is not going to be allowed to continue in a week's time, and Trump will be gone. And all I can say is, look, the Dems, now we have the White House. We don't have the court. That's been, fucked for decades at this point. But we have the Senate and the House. So I'd say just make use of that. Like, really, there's a lot to come back from. There's a lot
Senate,
of alliances.
honestly, I think you can probably put the Senate now into more so 3 different groups. It's not really just Democrats and Republicans. I think what you're going to have is you're going to have the more radical Democrats who
represent like no one, who represent like 5 people.
Like that was the bad thing about yesterday is Ossoff and Warnock literally have almost nothing in common with most Americans in terms of their actual policies that they advocate for. And when people are saying that they're going to pack the courts or add Puerto Rico and DC as new states, maybe if the Democrats had like 56 seats, but I think with people like Joe Manchin and Angus King, they definitely do not have a majority to do that with. So I think you're going to have you have the more radical Democrats, you have the regular to moderate Democrats or more centrist Democrats, and then you have mostly just the Republicans, and that's really it. Where I don't think that there's a radical majority. So I don't think the first term of like Biden is going to have a lot of gridlock, but I bet there's going to be a lot more moderation, purely just from what the Senate probably does. Even in the House, the Democrats' margin is so small for a majority that you're going to have a lot of Democrats who probably won't vote through more radical policies that Americans don't want.
I think
no, but that wasn't gonna happen regardless. So I wasn't overly.
There's definitely some people like Warnock who want. Well, not the Green New Deal, but you could have seen an attempt to put Puerto Rico in as a state if they had a large majority and a couple more of them were a little bit more to the Warnock side of things.
I wouldn't even necessarily consider that a radical policy. I think it's been a long time since we've had a new state, sure, but I wouldn't necessarily see the problem with turning a territory into a state. I think the only reason people would take issue with that is because Republicans would have a harder chance to win. And I would say just in response, well, maybe if you kind of curb off the Trumpian anti-immigrant
rhetoric and policies, then you'll be in the clear. You won't have to worry about that. So I don't necessarily.
I don't think the policies are really anti-immigrant. And the thing is, I think it's just the adding people at places like Puerto Rico and Washington D.C. would like as states. In my mind, it's sort of silly because just on the electoral map, especially in terms of electoral college votes, the problem right now is that there's a few states and it goes both red and blue, where like Texas is red and it just gives a giant chunk over to the Republicans every single like election, even though there's a significant like Democratic population in that state. And the same with California, even though the Democrats basically always win California, the place has a population of like 10 different states combined. And if you cut up the electoral votes a little bit more fairly, you get a bit more of a proportional representation of what people want, rather than how it currently goes. And the problem with Puerto Rico is that even though if you had Republicans there, you're basically just adding 2 Democratic senators to it, where the Republicans don't really have the ability to like add a new territory to balance it out.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, you reform the party's rhetoric, and if you really have a message that appeals to the everyday working class Joe, it really shouldn't matter where they are. It really shouldn't matter.
Well,
in that case.
then you could almost
the electoral
anything.
college, I'm not even pro electoral college. So I would sweep that problem under the rug, and I would say, if you are a Republican and you vote in California, your vote should not be undermined every election cycle. I don't believe in that. I think that that's a really terrible thing that we do to voters all across the country, no matter who they vote.
That seems more like a way of actually just saying, I want your vote counted properly, and then you're just going to get mobbed by Democrats every single time, because it's just true that people in urban areas tend to be more pro-centralized government.
Well,
the popular vote
comes
within a very close margin every
yeah,
time.
it's usually like the popular vote margin is always closer than like the electoral vote margin, and like even in an election like this, the difference was like a couple percent or 3%, where you'd say that the electoral, or not the electoral, but that the popular vote right now favors the Democrats. That's kind of true at the moment, but I don't see any reason why that would necessarily stay to be the case.
That's only the case right now because the Democrats are making an effort to appeal to more people. They're trying to, granted, a lot of them they're not like part of any majority group. But if you could basically count on, inner city white people, most minority groups, except for, a chunk of Latinos, that is a significant amount of the electorate. And if you expand your base, you have a better chance of winning that. You don't have to be.
Is that winning urban people is essentially like winning the same voter 75,000 times or 1,000,000 times in one city, in the sense that getting rural voters, you're actually having to like go for their specific interests that are more based on the environment. What kind of industries do they have in their towns and whatnot? Where urban voters, you're essentially saying that I'm more representative of you because I have like 1,000,000 more voters who voted for me, even though those voters have like a very homogenous, very simplistic sort of like group of needs, because they all have office jobs. That's pretty much their lives. Everyone has a very similar life, where you could say that the person who has fewer voters is actually appealing to more types of people. Not just
I don't even really know what that's supposed to mean, though. Like, I wouldn't agree that inner city voters they have like simplistic needs, or they're all
not that they're all the same. But my point is that you're appealing to very like a smaller number of types of people, because it's like the interests of people in the cities are going to be more narrow. Whereas when you're in like a manufacturing town in Ohio, or like a agricultural sort of center in Kansas, even though you could say, well, those are more rural, small town voters, they have very diverse sorts of interests that you have to appeal to win their votes. Where in urban areas, a lot of people want just centralized government, more programs, more sort of benefits and whatnot. Less people actually own their own businesses, where in agricultural areas, people tend to actually own everything, like tend to own where they work.
Well, more systems would probably help in the development of rural areas. I mean, I live in a rural area, and I don't feel beholden to, well, I need to vote this way because everyone around me is voting this way, which I think is also strange, because it's almost like you're saying that they vote in that they're a diverse group in the rural areas, yet they seem to vote so uniformly all the time.
Oh, of course, no. But that's why that's why the Electoral College is better, because you actually have to appeal to multiple regions. And the thing is that you can't just say, well, I don't actually have to care what people in the rural areas think because I don't care about winning that state. In the sense, like right now, if the Democrats want to win a race, they still have to appeal to some states that have large rural populations, and they still, like, they of course are going to do well in the urban areas, but that doesn't, like, they still have to at very least reach out to the small town as well. Where when it's all popular vote based, then you mostly are just campaigning in the large urban like urban centers, and who's going to actually ask rural people what they think, because it's such a waste of money to campaign for them.
Given how small the margin, they're not going on the campaign trail to little tiny podunk towns anyway. They go to a state, yeah, that may be less populated, but they go to the population center of the state. I don't think that that's going to stop. Given
the main presidential campaign
of the popular vote, they're going to need everyone. They're not going to be able to necessarily count. A Democrat won't be able to count on California. They're going to need to go all around California, hoping that there are more Democratic voters this time around.
No. The thing, of course, like when the presidential candidate goes to a state, they're not going to go to the middle of nowhere to campaign. Like maybe they'll do it for a photo op, but you still have to hire campaign staffers to go to those small podunk towns to sign people up to vote and whatnot. But if it's like having to pay that person, or even if it's a volunteer, having to put in the time with that person to sort of like help train them, help organize people in those smaller towns, and it's like, well, you got like 105 votes, and it's like, right now in the Electoral College system, that 105 votes isn't the world, but you still have to. It's still smart to compete for those 105. Where when it's popular vote based, like purely for the entire country, you know that the margins people are going to win by are at very least like 100,000 at the very slimmest.
I'd say just give the plan a chance, see how it goes. If the Democrats really fuck up and they fail to reach out to enough people to be able to win the popular vote, which is a very rare occurrence in the 21st century, then they deserve to lose, quite frankly. Then they failed. But I just don't agree with basically making it so it's a winner take all system. Other people have kind of proposed a ranking system, and I can kind of get behind that, but I just want people's votes to count, even if it means that, the margin is a little bit less and things are a bit more up in the air in terms of who wins. Instead of having it, because instead of coming down to the big cities, basically now it comes down to a handful of bipolar states that can never make up their mind in terms of what they want, because the people there are so split. I think that all that has done is succeed in increasing the divisive rhetoric and nature of this country. And I mean, people feel, even today when they're protesting in DC, people don't feel represented. Well, part of that is losing. You're not always going to win. But something that would really help, people feel like they were being represented, or feel like people actually cared, like voting actually meant something. You would have so many more people come out to vote if they actually thought, oh yeah, I actually need to vote. I can't just rely on being in New York State or being in California. That's not good enough anymore, because potentially the rural areas could outnumber New York City. You never know. It really depends on who's running. But I'll leave that. I'm kind of a radical on that. But
yeah, well,
it's my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do want to wrap this up by about the 1 hour mark. So we are coming up on that. I've got a debate later with the Tulsi Gabbard supporter, so who defends Iran, big fan of Iran. So that's going to be interesting. But we'll go to Wyatt for his rebuttal, and then we'll do around the closing remarks on the stream. And then I'll be back on here at 6 p.m. Pacific time for the debate.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to finish that up by saying I like the Electoral College system, because I think that it does provide a better check against sort of like the thing is, if a candidate ever becomes super popular in certain communities that are like in big population centers, and most candidates would then be encouraged to always be of the style of the big city, that you eventually get to the point, especially because we know that as time goes on, the country gets less rural and more urban, is that now we are basically motivated to appeal less and less to all kinds of people around the US, and we're more so motivated to pick whichever groups are most likely to vote for us like the hardest, and like in the hardest like in one direction, rather than trying to rather than constantly having to not like morph yourself as if you're like a liar, but having to actually have a platform that has something for everyone where it's like, if you don't need Wyoming, then why have anything about like cattle ranching or something like that in your platform that helps them? Because it's like, well, that's like 10,000 votes. I don't need them. And I think the whole point of the electoral college system is also to balance out regions where each state should inherently have some form of power, not just some sort of like decimal point compared to another one just because they happen to not have the largest cities, which just means that there's a historical bias towards certain places. Like, of course, the East Coast is going to have a lot more power because they were the original 13 colonies. They have a lot more of the oldest cities, so that's where the population is built up the most. And then on the coast of California, you have a lot of bigger cities due to trade. And now those cities just sort of arbitrarily, due to history and geography, are now the most powerful, and they don't have anyone in Wyoming or Kansas really balancing them out in a real way.
Yeah, well, I think my position on the Electoral College is that, yeah, I think that there's an advantage to having a system that does reward people to basically incorporate different regions into account there. I'm not really too much a fan of like the ranked choice voting or like PR in that sense, or even more or less, like I generally am pretty skeptical of even like the parliamentary system in general. I think the U.S. system by and large is pretty good in terms of how it functions, but as far as moving over to a popular vote system goes, I know that a lot of people kind of talk about it as if it would be like, oh, well, then you're just going to have Democrats win all the time. It's like, I don't believe that would actually happen. I think that I think that it would be the sort of case that that you would have Republicans win. And it might take, as Reese was saying, it might take adjusting some of the messaging there. But I mean, if it were true that the Republicans were just so overwhelmingly unpopular compared to the Democrats, you'd see popular vote margins that were like 10%, 5%, which you don't usually see. It's usually within a couple percentage points. So I don't really think that ending it is as much a threat to the GOP as a lot of people kind of talk about. But I can see the point that you're making, Wyatt, though, about how different regions and specifically different demographics of voters are definitely going to have different sort of concerns. But I'm not 100% decided on that one, though. I
feel like you would definitely get a lot more interventionists in the White House if you was popular vote based, because if you go to any of the urban centers, you're going to have a lot of people who just sort of like eat up very wishy-washy type mainstream media coverage of certain conflicts, like the places that push the notion that like somehow like like Bush lied, people died sort of garbage, where I feel like people in rural areas tend to be a little bit more traditionally patriotic, where they don't just sort of immediately jump to conspiracy theories if like they just because they don't understand an actual armed conflict.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the conspiracy theory thing definitely goes on both sides, though. Like, you got people on the Democratic side and more so the progressive side. They're like, Bush lied and people died. And now you're seeing that with like a lot of the paleocons and stuff too. But then you do have like the QAnon people who basically have the same talking points on like the Iraq War and Iran and China and everything. But China is a little bit different, but they tend to be more from like the far right sort of side of things. So it's kind of a mixed bag in both cases. But I do want to wrap this up now because, like I said, I got a lot to do today, and then I got the debate later. But yeah, so we did a live stream instead of a premiere today. We got a debate with a Tulsi Gabbard supporter at 6 o'clock Pacific time. Henry might actually be doing a stream later on to cover the riots in DC. But at this point, we'll just go to closing remarks. So we'll start with Wyatt, and then we'll go to Reese.
Yeah, just to sum it back up, all the people storming the Capitol are idiots. Populism sucks because it has absolutely zero principles behind it, so anyone can slip into the crowd. And I would really like it if people went back to actually defining what they think and running on the merits of their ideas rather than running on the strength of how good their rhetoric is.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, that's the thing with populism is you can literally brand raising taxes or lowering taxes as both populist, which is stupid.
You can at the way that I find it annoying. I think I said this earlier. Is just the people who are almost into politics purely out of optics. The people who don't call their congressperson or email them or sign up people to vote, because I guess that doesn't look. It doesn't look good enough. I guess on their social media. They'd rather be the people showing up to protests, waving flags, doing really stupid chants, banging drums and whatnot. Those people are the least likely to actually be engaging in a way that actually changes anything. And I find that populism endorses it because it tries to get crowd reactions, not actual results.
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Wyatt. We'll go to Reese for your closing remarks.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I don't really have too much to add from that. It's kind of surreal, but it's not surprising at the same time. So it's a very strange kind of event. Everyone knew something was that was going to happen. This wasn't just going to whimper off and die away and oh yeah, no, the Trump era's over and peacefully, and there was no issues. No, it's. And the thing is, the effects of it are going to be felt for a long time, for many years. And I don't know. I kind of got distracted with the Electoral College thing. I don't mean to, but it's something I care about. So I bring it up every now and then. But this also is something I care about because people are going to, anytime I criticize right-wingers, I am accused of being a partisan hack. You only vote blue no matter who. Well, I've only voted in 2 presidential elections. I don't know what you want from me. And I've said that if I'd been able to, I would have voted for Romney. I would have voted for McCain. I would have voted for Bush. So what the fuck are you talking about? I'm not. No,
I know. People think you're a partisan hack and that you're I guess a Democratic operative or whatever, this kind of thing. I don't normally do this. I
disagree with plenty of the rhetoric and the optics and the tactics and, basically to a degree, everyone in power. I disagree with Kamala Harris. I disagree with Joe Biden. I still think it's going to be a marked improvement over what I've had to put up with for 4 years. But, it doesn't mean that I'm, completely in lockstep with everything. This is embarrassing. And the real reason to care about this is I would like to see the party of a John McCain come back. I would like that.
No, absolutely. I don't normally do this in the closing remarks phase, but the vice president of the United States just changed his cover picture. I don't know if he got hacked or not, or if this is an actual statement at this point, but he changed it to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. No. When I was watching Vosh earlier to see what he was saying about this stuff before we went live, there were rumors that Mike Pence had unfollowed Donald Trump on Twitter, but they hadn't confirmed it yet.
Somebody check it.
But he's only following 48 people. They're like, how do you check it and stuff? Because he was talking with Brainlet June. And they're like, how do you check if he's following? No, he's still following. He's still following Donald Trump on Twitter. But he did change
Vosh
his
seriously ask, how do you check to see who he's following?
Yeah.
What a moron.
No,
there's literally a button you push. Following.
You know what? You know what it might be? He probably follows like 5,000 people, so maybe that's why he was asking me. He's like one of those Charlie Kirk bros. Or like, didn't they used to cap?
Look how many followers I have, bro.
No. Look at how many followings I have, bro. Like they reverse it. It's like I know that Twitter used to have a cap, whereas now Charlie Kirk can just follow like a literal small city of people. But Vosh is following 471 people, so that's 10 times as many as the vice president, 5 times as many as me. Vosh asked that, which is funny. But Pence says here, peaceful protest is the right of every American, but this attack on our Capitol will not be tolerated, and those involved will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. It's like, yeah, they breached security lines, and then he had to call in the National Guard. Of course, those people are going to jail. The violence and destruction taking place at the U.S. Capitol must stop, and must stop now. Anyone involved must respect law enforcement officers and immediately leave the building. And he changed his cover picture to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. So, like, do we think that he actually did that, or was this a hack? Like,
I could see him doing it, honestly, after all the shit that Trump's been talking about him. You know, even at some point, Mike Pence has had enough. And but the thing is, you know, it's kind of predictable. Like, a lot of people were, you know, very quietly, they were going to try to back away after Trump. Like, oh, I wasn't involved with that. I had nothing to do with that. But look, man, welcome to the internet age. People have long memories. They're not going to forget this. They're not going to forget that Pence was a part of this. They're not going to forget what Ted Cruz was saying about, you know, a fraudulent election or whatever. People are not going to forget that. And, you know, it remains to be seen. I think you're going to see a significant split in the American conservative movement in the years to come. And potentially,
oh yeah, no, the mega guys, like the mega guys, they're gonna now trash Pence as being like a lifelong Democrat, right? So
yeah, another John Bolton. Oh, these lifelong Democrats.
No, yeah.
See, that's the problem. Like, what chance do I have when, you know, Mike Pence is critical or John Bolton is critical? These guys get trashed as being communists, leftists, and it's okay. Look, I have all kinds of concerns with communism and socialism, but this McCarthyism has gone a bit far, has it not? Because basically anyone at this point is a communist. If you disagree with the president, if you want law and order, if you don't want Congress to be invaded, you're a communist. Unbelievable. I can't even.
I know we said that
they literally try to compare it, the establishment, you know, the system that we have in place, law and order, to, well, you know, it's kind of like communist China. I saw people doing that on Twitter today. You know, it's kind of like communist China because they have law and order too, and they have rules that you're expected to follow. Whatever happened to freedom? It's like, are you kidding me? Like, that cannot possibly be a serious opinion. But that's how some people think. And that's why it goes beyond Trump. Trump was kind of a rallying figure for people who were right-wing, but they didn't really care for the system. And they wanted to take things by force or memes and just kind of make a joke out of everything. Well, you know, Trump is replaceable. Trump is not even a lifelong conservative. They'll find somebody else. And the next person will be probably even worse. I don't know if they'll have a chance of ever winning anything, but I can see this going down a very Fuentes path real soon, because that's the kind of people who are attracted to this, like, let's storm shit, let's take over shit type of message. And ultimately, it's not successful. If anything, all you've done is weaken and split the conservative movement, and the Democrats will have significantly more power. But the thing is, it's not even going to be kind of their fear-mongery nightmare, because we're going to go through 4 years with Joe Biden as president, and nothing is going to happen. It's going to be like a culture shock. After the last 4 years compared to the next 4 years, people are going to get whiplash. There's going to be nothing to talk about. Like, and all it's going to be really is they're going to be complaining about innocuous things like, oh, he didn't wear a fucking American flag pin, so he's a communist. But the thing is, that doesn't work anymore. People voted for Trump the first time for some bizarre reason because they thought he was an outsider, because they were just tired of the system in general. They were tired of Chuck Schumer Democrats just as much as they were tired of Jeb Bush Republicans. So they voted for Trump. A lot of people who voted for Trump were left wing, by the way. They previously voted for Obama.
Oh
This
yeah,
time
no,
around,
like
he
Trump and Kyle and Neckbeard Jimmy. Those guys.
Oh yeah,
were
they probably looked over their shoulder and they're like, "Man, it'd be really funny if he won. Let's just see what happens."
No. I know 100% Kremlin Kyle was rooting for Trump to win. Like there's no way.
He did vote for Jill Stein, which is basically like voting for Trump.
Oh yeah, Jill Stein. Well, the thing is, for all of the stuff about Donald Trump being weak on Russia and everything and all that kind of stuff, even Trump didn't have dinner with Putin in the last 10 years, at least, as far as I recall. Jill Stein had dinner with Putin. I think it was in 2013 or something. So it's like there's a bigger case for Jill Stein to be, an operative for the Russians than Donald Trump in that sense. But like she's very close to Putin. Trump, of course, got financing from for his golf courses from Russia, and his own son admitted it. But he did still go against their interests on Iran. I don't even think Jill Stein would have done that. Jill Stein would have been worse on foreign policy than Donald Trump, in my view.
Oh yeah, because the thing is, she was an active non-interventionist. Donald Trump was a non-interventionist by like happenstance. Whenever he thought it was popular, he was anti-intervention. But when he was trying to spite the Obama administration, he went tough on Iran. So, I guess that is technically better. It's very unpredictable, very inefficient, and very unhelpful. And now basically we're in this situation where we've escalated significantly more with Iran, and we don't have much of a follow through. And they just continue to do it. Like they just invaded a South Korean ship.
Yeah, they did.
What are we doing about that? Absolutely nothing. I don't think Trump's even talked about it.
Well, that's the thing. At least with Trump, though, he is unpredictable. Whereas with Jill Stein and Bernie Sanders and their ilk, 100% all the time, they're always going to be weak on foreign policy. At least with Trump, there's a chance he does the right thing for whatever reason, but because he's just looking at what's popular or whatever and all this kind of stuff. Whereas for them, they would simp Iran even if they knew that it would only get them 1% support because they believe in it, like they're
what you're getting essentially. But I found it interesting earlier when we were talking about the Electoral College and how maybe a system like that would produce more hawkish leaders. I don't even know about that necessarily. I think that it really depends on who you would consider a hawkish leader. I think that ultimately it's something that when you're running for president, you don't even really need to talk about it. I would appreciate it if you talked about it. But if you're trying to get people's votes, you're probably first going to be talking about domestic issues.
Yeah,
that's what people are, especially now, are going to be gravitating toward. And the president does have a lot of power in that arena, but there's also a lot of people who are not elected, who are in the Pentagon, who are various representatives there. They're in the military and other fields, and they are also very instrumental in calling the shots. You're not really dependent on an electorate who agrees with you on everything to have those people in power, because I think just by default, given the world that those people live in and work in, they're always going to be more hawkish than the general population.
Yeah, for sure.
It kind of represents a bigger problem because there has been so much Michael Moore tier propaganda over just the last 20, 30 years. I don't know how you come back from that. I don't have some like fix all solution. It's tough because so many people
buy into that. So many people have, basically become very nationalistic. They don't care about the world outside of America. Even if you try to convince them, well, actually, this is in your best interest. It's in the national interest to care about national security, obviously, but people don't get that. It's kind of depressing that you would even have to explain that to begin with. Like, yeah, maybe you should care about your own security, but you know, it is what it is. But the thing is, I'm not all that concerned about another anti-interventionist getting that kind of power anytime soon, because I think that Trump succeeded in staining that for the Republicans pretty significantly. And I also think, and if they have somebody run who's even more like of a dedicated paleo-conservative non-interventionist, all they're going to do is take votes. Basically, they're going to split the right and guarantee a Democratic victory at that point, because
for sure.
Because last time, when Trump initially won, a lot of people were running against him, and you have to consider, well, maybe if like Rubio and Cruz had split, they'd combined their votes, maybe they actually could have won. One of them could have won, but so many people were power hungry in that election. And then going forward, they're not going to let that happen again. They're going to insist that somebody stay the course and not let Trump or one of his children gain the nomination. Also, they can deny them the nomination. That is a power they have. I don't think people are fully aware of that, but it is something. It's a drastic measure. I understand that. But when we're talking about national security, I don't think we have 4 more years to waste necessarily.
Yeah.
And on the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders is too old to run. And like, seriously, who's going to run? Ilhan Omar can't run. AOC's not old enough to run yet. Like, are they gonna run Ro Khanna for president? I don't fucking think so. They don't have
They'll run
Mike Gravel.
Mike Gravel. And then like
because Bernie's too old, he's not too old.
Yeah, no, Dylan Burns will be like his chief of staff or whatever. And
that would be the most cringeworthy thing to ever happen to America.
No, I know. And he'll just be like, or like he'll become like the press secretary or something, and like some reporter from like Fox or whatever will ask so the President Gravel, he pulled troops out of every country in the world right now. Like why? And Dylan Burns will just be like, oh yeah, you sound like somebody who watches Devin Tracy.
I thought Dylan Burns, wanted to work with the South Koreans. Why wouldn't we keep our troops there? I don't understand.
It's imperialism.
Oh, I see how it is. Yeah, no.
No, I know. I said we were going to wrap it up. I know we said we were going to wrap it up. This happens sometimes, where like we go with closing remarks and then it goes on a tangent. But like, that is the thing. So. We should probably wrap up the stream. But
I actually did see, this is kind of a final thing, but I saw that shout out you got from Devin. That was so funny.
Yeah. See, the thing is, some people are like, dude, he's like kind of making fun of you or whatever. It's like, I don't care.
He makes fun of everyone.
He makes fun of literally everybody. He makes fun of literally everybody. I thought it was funny.
It's cool that he even saw it, honestly.
No, you know what's funny about it is like my favorite part is how like when I mentioned it's like and he invoked the name and the legacy. At that moment, the spooky music starts playing, and you're like, here we go. Like it was so good. It was so good. Just the way
you watch the way like it's ridiculous. He is like he's a very talented content creator who has been shamefully censored off basically every platform ever. He's on censored TV now, fittingly.
Yeah, you sound like a Nazi, man. You sound like somebody who watches Devin Tracy.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
No, but think about this. Think about this.
Twitter right now talking against, the people marching on DC. But yeah, what a Nazi. That's something a Nazi would say.
Yeah, what's hilarious about it is like Dylan Burns watched the debate with Liz, and then 5 months later decided that he wanted to try replicating it. Amazing. Because he saw her ask about Devin Tracy. He's like, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing. And she lost.
Yeah, you could tell they were running on fumes at that point. It's like, well, I would say it's guilt by association, except there's no guilt because watching Devin Tracy is not a bad thing. That's ridiculous.
No, but that sounds like something that somebody who watches Devin Tracy would say. Gotcha. Like what I love about it.
I watch Devin Tracy from time to time. It doesn't matter. Like that is such a lazy lack of a refutation of anything he's ever said in any of his videos. They're just like, I don't like his videos. I don't like what he says. I'm not actually going to address what he said in the video. So, he's a Nazi. If you watch him, you're a Nazi. Where does it end? Really?
Well, he called me a fascist. In fairness, he called me a fascist, not a Nazi. That's what Dylan Burns called me.
Yeah, he called you a fascist because you said that BLM is a terrorist organization, which, based on, a lot of the leadership and what they've said, yeah, you can make a very strong case for it.
Yeah, to be clear on that, I'm talking about the leadership of the movement. I'm not saying that everybody who goes to a BLM rally is a terrorist, obviously. But that went over his head. Like literally, I've condemned Asuka for talking about running him over with his car, for example. And yet, here's the ultimate irony in it. In that same fucking debate, when Burns accused me of basically saying, like, look, you watch Devin Tracy videos, yet you talk about how you care about democracy. You're a fascist. His source, for everybody who's out there right now that might have seen that debate. When he mentions in the beginning, even neocons disagree with you on North Korea. I was told in the run-up to this debate, even neocons reached out to me and said, this Kevin guy is crazy. He's specifically referring to neocon Asuka, who passed him, I guess, dirt on me. And yet neocon Asuka is the guy who wants to run over BLM protesters with his car. And he spent months now basically defending it. He hasn't denied that. Even on the debate when he came on, he basically said, his context for it actually made it worse, because I almost assumed that when he was talking about it before, he was implying that they would be doing threatening things or whatever towards his vehicle. Whereas now he's like, oh no, even just them standing there, you don't know which way it's going to go. He actually made it worse. But that guy, the thing that's so stupid is what's
that mean? They're standing there menacingly.
Yeah, no, that's right. The thing about Dylan Burns is that Dylan Burns has gone to these rallies. Dylan Burns went to the Million MAGA rally on basically the other side, and he saw people get if I recall correctly, he said that he saw people shot at or something by the Trump supporters or whatnot. I forget exactly what happened. Vosh covered it. So this is somebody who's very, very, very pro BLM, and he used his source in that debate to besmirch me. He used neocon Asuka as his source for the neocons that don't like me and disagree with me.
In contrast to neocon Asuka, we are pro BLM. That's how major the difference is. So,
well, yeah, if you have to choose between running over randoms with your car, the thing is that neocon Asuka doubled down on it, because I saw he was tweeting too, and he had this screenshot of neocon New World Order over on Reddit, and he's like, look, even other neocons are against BLM, where they were saying that Trump should basically send in the National Guard and stuff, and it's wait, but we've also called for Trump to send in the National Guard in particular cases. There's a bit of a difference between that and what Asuka was suggesting. Asuka's full of shit. And the thing that was dumb about it is so Dylan Burns' source was a guy who would basically want to run him over in his car, because Dylan Burns actually goes to the BLM rallies. It's kind of pathetic, honestly. And then he uses me watching Devin Tracy. In other words, watching Devin Tracy is worse than being buddies with neocon Asuka, but neocon Asuka actually wants to run over BLM protesters. Dylan Burns.
this would be the spiciest meme that ever came out of this community, but someone should make a meme where Neocon Azuka is at the rally and he's running over Dylan Burns, but out his window he's shouting some anti-Kevin talking points to use during the debate.
Dylan Burns. Yeah, like Kevin watches Devin
meme creators.
Like he's literally no. Neocon Asuka is literally behind the wheel of a car and on top of Dylan Burns' legs, and Dylan Burns like, but Kevin watches Devin Tracy. He's a racist, and like Dylan and Asuka's car, and Asuka's car says something like "kill all," you know what word, that kind of thing. Like, you know, that's basically like where we're coming from. I mean, I ain't saying that Asuka is a white supremacist. I'm just saying, like, he can come on the show and tell me why he's not, but he literally wants to run over people with his car. That, like, I mean, just the extent to which he talks about BLM. Like, this is an area where I guess I'm more in agreement with McCarthyist on, because McCarthyist says that BLM isn't like an issue or whatever. I disagree. I think it is worth talking about with the riots and stuff, but
we definitely disagree on that. He's very tunnel visioned. McCarthyist is.
Yeah, well, like, okay, so all that Asuka ever really talks about is these stupid social issues. So basically, people have called him a paleocon who's a neocon on foreign policy, but that doesn't even exactly make sense, because the thing that's dumb about it is, like, he's basically saying to me, like he said before, he's like, Kevin's not really in any way a neocon or whatever because he's not like super conservative and all this stuff. The irony here is that I give more credit to Trump than any of the other prominent neocons on Twitter. Like, I'm sure Asuka would say that Bill Kristol and David Frum are at this point like basically communists or whatever, or at least Democrats. I think it's funny. I think it's funny that Asuka gets to be the arbiter of what counts as serious, because he called me an unserious person, which is also funny because given who he is, and he's like a random anime profile picture, and he's like, no, you don't get it. You don't get it, dude. You don't get it. Literally everybody like that I know thinks you're a joke. And it's like, and I'm like, okay, but like, I don't care. Like, why would I care?
Well, you're doing debates now, so they're free to come on and explain why you're a joke. But
no.
Most of them will not. They won't even bother with that.
Reese, did you ever see the meme, the offending meme that you asked for that night? I found it.
Yeah, I did. And I mean, I still don't even understand what he was bitching about, because he was like, "Oh, see you. We made a meme to make fun of you, and you shared it, so you've been owned." And it's like, well, it was a funny meme. Like, you have to be able to laugh at yourself sometimes.
No, that's the other thing. These people are just a joke, because it's like, like. So I guess Neocon Azuka's definition of being a serious person is never laughing at anything. Like, because personally, when I watched the Devin Tracy clip, I was like, and I'm like, because I knew once I saw which clip it specifically was, I'm like, I knew immediately, oh, he's probably going to talk trash about me because I said my nickname was better than his. And he did. Like, he's like, oh yeah, like my nicknames are the best.
It was coming.
It's like, no, I knew it was coming. But
to settle that controversy. Obviously, the best jank nickname is Fat Brown Buffalo. I mean, that's irreplaceable. That's a meme that has a life of its own. Like, people just say that. They don't even know that Devin made that. They just say it because it's just a part of the common lexicon now. People see jank and they're like, well, that's a Fat Brown Buffalo. That's what he is.
That's true. I like Keek, like when he does like a long Keek, when like he really goes, like when he puts his all into it. That's always great.
I'll tell you, because I recently kind of started binging some of his new content. I hadn't watched him in a while because obviously people know that
I haven't watched him for months.
I guess I'm an official Nazi because I've been watching, but I just wanted to catch up, and obviously we have a history, and I mean we had some disagreements. I don't give a shit about that anymore. It's like 4 years ago at this point, but like I was watching it because I just wanted to kind of catch up on some of the talking points, and a lot of them, obviously because it's Devin, their responses to jank, and so it's kind of a double-edged sword because you get the funny nicknames, but then you also have to endure jank, and jank is like one of the most painfully stupid people I've ever listened to in my life.
We're
I
against
found
Saudi
myself
Arabia, you
like-
dumbass. We talk
You
about it all the
dumbass.
time. Talk
Like,
about it
it's
all the
hand-
time.
hand in palm while I'm watching this guy, like for minutes on end. It is unbelievable the things he gets away with saying.
70% of America is progressive, and like the Democratic
That's
establishment
why he got
doesn't get it.
6% of the vote in fucking California.
Well, that's why I call him Mr. 6%. Like, to me, I'm obviously biased. I think that that's the funniest because he spent over $1 million to get 6%, and the runner-up, who got 5%, spent $500. To me, that's hilarious. But I get why Fat Brown Buffalo is probably funnier, and Keek is funnier, and Gank. I personally find Gank the most satisfying one to say. Like, oh yeah, like simmer down, Gank. Or like Kyle is another one of those ones where like you can really kind of like use it in a condescending way. It's like oh, simmer down, Kyle. You know, it's there are those types of names where they just lend themselves to basically being used in a really condescending way. Like, oh yeah, Gank. like I mean, my favorite one about Gank was when some guy in the UK sent Devin a video pretending to be the BBC, saying how Genk Uger has died, and it was like going over his like life work. And
Yeah, that's right.
No, it's so funny. But the funniest part was that the BBC filed a copyright strike against Devin for that, saying that
Well, clearly it was a good impression of them.
that it would lead people to think that this might actually be a BBC report, and Devin's like, wait, but like we call him Gank. His name is Jank.
It was Gank's long lost twin brother, Gank.
Gank.
He
That's
looks
right.
just like him and everything.
Like, there is another nickname. I actually think that the best nickname, like, well, I guess it's kind of mine. Like, the whole Hot Gang kind of came up with it, but it's I can't repeat it on the air, but it's horse. It's horse, and then it's an R, and then it's the monkey emoji, and there's a synonym for monkey that that rhymes with grape, and then jank. So that one's pretty funny. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, check out his videos defending bestiality.
I gotcha. Oh man, talk about a low point for a man with too many low points to name.
I'm just saying. You got an emoji for an ape covering his eyes, and then you got an R. What's that make? So.
You better cover those eyes, poor little monkey. You don't.
No, that's my favorite part.
Jank.
It's like there are 3 different monkey emojis. There's the one where like he's looking at you and he's got his tail, and it's a sideways profile. And then there's the one where it's like he's like jumping or something. And then there's the one where he's like covering his eyes or whatnot. No, he's covering his mouth. That's the funniest part because it's like, can't say that word. Can't say that word.
Hear no evil, speak no evil.
No, it lends itself, and like I'm pretty sure I've used that term on Twitter before. If if I look up horse jank, I'm pretty sure if I type that in, I'm pretty sure. But like we watched it on the show. He has literally defended it, and my favorite part about that is that he doubled down on this in 2007, and then in 2019 he also did. So he's got a 12-year record of defending that thing, and it's kind of embarrassing. Like, imagine unironically being jank, and yeah. I mean,
I like the idea of you tweeting at Jank a lot, and you always call him horse beep Jank, and then this becomes like a new thread, and then maybe like some of the Liz followers will like they'll do like motion capture of like, oh man, look at this, look how many times he's tweeted this at poor Jank.
Well, that's what she did about communism. Like, by the way, I guess the stream hasn't ended, but that's often what happens. But by the way, Wyatt can come back in if he's like listening right now, but like, because like that's not really fair. I thought, but
we should end soon because I know
we should end shortly. But
this does happen. I'll let you finish what you were gonna say, and we can sign off.
Well, Liz made a motion capture thing, like I guess it's a fan cam, as the kids would say, except she's not really a fan of all the times that I had tweeted out, imagine being a communist in X year. Well, I reached current year twice in the last month now. So I'm up to imagine being a communist in 2021. And she's like, oh yeah, this is what a normal person does. It's like, okay, but she literally defends necrophilia. And I've noticed, I said this before, and like I've said this to you, Reese, but like we've got a lot of new subscribers, a lot of new viewers and everything. There's a reason why communists tend to be such big fans of necrophilia. Same with like Maria the Witch and everything. Like that okay liberal girl. Basically like a poor comrade's Nico, a poor comrade's okay boomer girl. All of them, it's not so much that they become communists and then they decide that they like necrophilia. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's like, do people become teachers and then they become pedophiles, or is it the other way around? It's like, well, no. If you want to be like into dead bodies, the fastest way to get a lot of them is communism. So it makes sense, right? It's like,
I suppose it does make sense in a very twisted, disgusting way.
I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, you're basically signing up for like 100 million plus. It's an orgy, right? I mean, it's a smorgasbord. I know, right? I know. And that's like, I want people to understand. It's like, yeah, necrophilia, ew. It's like, yeah, but like when you think of communism, I want you to think of necrophilia, because it's a necrophilia extreme right there. It's a utopia, right? I mean,
there are indeed a lot of dead people, and they were fucked over in the end. So yeah, it's very necrophilic in nature.
No, it's true. But then, of course, I had
my favorite. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say it's kind of on a different point, but you mentioned something earlier about how like, oh yeah, well, like you're for law and order, but like China's for law and order. I had some absolute brainlets the other day try to tell me how. And they were Nazguls, and they were basically saying how, like, yeah, but here's the thing about the neocons, is that the neocons are literally no different than the Nazis, because you guys both, all that you're about is war. You have the same war culture. And I'm like, yeah, but war is ideology neutral. Like, we've done war as a species before ideologies, thousands of years before they were ever a thing. Like, before civilization even was a thing, there was war. Like, this idea that, you're a war hawk, therefore you're a fascist. It's like, okay, what?
Yeah, this
like,
is probably someone who believes in a violent revolution too, by the way. So they're clearly not adverse to throwing some punches in the streets. But that
sure.
violence takes it too far.
And that's the other thing. That's the other thing about all this is like that's the one thing that I would ask Uncle Thomas about. Like the next time he comes on for a debate, I know he wants to have a debate with me about Israel, and you're thinking like, oh, Nazgul debating about Israel. Yeah, I know. No, like, because people are going to say, oh, well, like, and I've had people say too, they're like, yeah, but you probably shouldn't be debating these people. It gives them a platform and stuff. It's like, I don't care anymore. I'm done with this idea that neocons and hawks and stuff can only write policy papers that 200 people read. I want to be the guy who's out here actually debating and owning these people in the public square that oppose our view on the world. And yeah, there's this idea that like, oh, they're just boomers or whatever. It's like, yeah, try me. Come on here and debate. I'll literally debate a Tulsi Gabbard fanboy. That's what's happening tonight in 4 hours. These people, this is the one thing that I would ask Uncle Thomas, because it was a pretty polite and cordial conversation. I would have just asked him. I would have liked him, because he almost kind of admitted it, but I would have liked to get clear clarification where I say, look, you guys are like anti-war and stuff, but let's just be real. You guys are fine with Iran and Russia doing their thing. You're just against America. Like, because anti-war people is just code for pro-war if it's Russia doing it, pro-war if it's Iran doing it. Nobody's actually like anti-war. That's not a thing. Like I
would seriously doubt there's many alt-righters who want to embolden something like the United Nations to be the world police and step in, peacefully, in quotes, to end conflicts.
Oh yeah, it's a total mess.
They're the Green Lantern Corps, even though they have no power
whatsoever.
Yeah, I just what I generally saw there is that there's this sort of sense of American exceptionalism that America is exceptionally bad, and so in that sense, we're both American exceptionalists too. You know, like and I got kicked out of a war group or an anti-war group. I got kicked out of a group called anti-war atheist or whatever, and somebody like I joined it about a month ago to like post videos and stuff to trigger these people, and when one of their mods messaged me the other day and she said, your video, your link is being reported. I think I shared one of my memes. Your link has been reported and I've got some questions for you. I'm wondering, are you a troll? Because it doesn't look like you're a good fit here, and people have been saying that you're not actually anti-war. Are you anti-war? And are you an atheist? And I'm like, one, I'm not a troll. Two, I'm agnostic atheist. And three, I am anti-war. I'm against Russia's war on the Syrian people, and I'm against Iran's war on the people of the Middle East. And she's like, she responds almost right away and says, so you're a troll. And I'm like, and I told her, I'm not a troll. I'm literally a neocon. You can look at my channel, and I linked it to her. And she was like, and I said, I'm like, that's like saying that Bill Kristol or David Frum or John Bolton are trolling. And she's like, if you're in the same crowd as those people, you're filth and you're a disease. And Russia is not doing a war against the Syrian people. Russia is fighting imperialism, and Iran is fighting imperialism. And I'm like, and I'm basically like, oh, so literally everybody that you disagree with is just a troll. And she's like, so I kicked you from the group, which I expected. But then I like this one too. She's like, I'm also personally blocking you. In other words, not interested in a debate. So really, really interesting. So
well, yeah,
I like that.
Can't stand up against scrutiny. Like that's an inherently. All it takes is like 5 seconds on Google. Hey, are the Russians launching a war against the Syrian people? And that's debunked, you know, basically, or the claim that they're not, because that's ridiculous.
She accused me before she banned me. She accused me of basically being brainwashed by CNN and MSNBC to be pro-war. And I'm like, because she's like, so you're pro-war. And I'm like, no, I'm anti-war. I'm literally against Russia and North Korea and Iran doing war on innocent people. And she's like, she's like, but what do you think about our interventions? I said, I totally support that. We liberate oppressed people and push back imperialist empires trying to take over the world. And she accused me of being an imperialist and a troll. And she also accused me of being a bloodlusting neocon hack. So I guess that's true. So. You know.
So how can you be both though? Like a troll is someone who's not being serious about what they're saying. So if you were actually a troll, you would be anti-war. You would just be trying to rile them up.
No, I know. That's the thing. That's the thing. It's like in her view, because I asked her, I'm like, so are all neocons trolls? And she said basically yes. Like it was like she's like, if you can't see what the Russians are doing in Syria, she's like, if you can't see why Russia's in Syria, you're a troll.
Well, I mean, it's obvious they're there to support a completely despotic state because it happens to be a puppet state of theirs, a very useful arm into the heart of the Middle East and right on the doorstep of American allies. So yeah, that's why they're there. You think they give a fuck about Syrian people? These people are delusional. Syrian people, how many Syrians have died in the last 10 years because of this shit?
Between 200 and 500,000 and 8 million had to flee. But I did want to mention one more thing before we go off the air. I did a video recently that really pissed off Kyle and Crystal, KGB Crystal and Kremlin Kyle's fans. Timothy made this. This is the thumbnail for it. That's their new show. Did you hear that they have a new show? Did you hear that they have a new show?
Oh yeah, no, talk about the worst people ever on a show, really.
Well, that's them right there.
That makes Useful Idiots watchable. Like that's how bad this is.
There's another one by Timothy. Here's one by Arthur. Speaking of Arthur, Arthur just sent me a bunch of the graphics that I basically requested that he make for the music channel. And we're like at this channel now, I'm paying Arthur for every graphic that he produces because we got the patron base up big enough. So Arthur's getting paid for all the graphics now. So that's dank. And he's going to be doing the ones for the film channel next month, and hopefully I'll have some uploads over there within the next couple months. So because I do want to do film.
Say is, Kevin's a workhorse, but I would advise him to stay away from Jank.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. I see what you did there. Well, yeah, it's like we were debating before. It's like, you know, is it bestiality if Jank is also a buffalo? Turns out yes, because buffaloes and horses are different species. So
it's wrong. It's a sin against nature.
Mm-hmm. It's a sin against the hot gods.
The hot god's just looking down, yeah, palm and forehead. Oh, why?
Yeah, it's like they're all up there. Like you have like you have Hitchens.
By the way, speaking of Jank, I love how Jimmy's now trying to smear him as, well, yeah, because he was like a former Republican. He was former pro-war. Yeah, he was a Republican like 35 years ago.
Yeah.
He is not currently a Republican, and he is not in favor of really any intervention. He's on board with Anna. So basically,
no, but Anna's a pro. No, I'm using the exact words that Jimmy Dore used right now. I know because I did a video on it. He called Anna a quote pro-war NATO dupe unquote. Did you see that?
What war is she in favor of?
No. That's what Jimmy said.
In favor of a war in Syria, where she's constantly talking about how her people are there and they're displaced and they're refugees and they're under siege.
No, I know.
That's how much of a piece of shit Anna Kasparian is. She won't even lift a finger to defend her own fucking people. So no, she's not pro-war.
She opposes fighting the Al Qaeda. She doesn't just oppose fighting the Taliban. She literally calls Tulsi Gabbard a neocon.
People like Jimmy, people like Michael Tracy, they give Tulsi a pass. She's an interventionist.
No, there's the tweet right there for proof. Jank's executive producer, bad faith attacks former employees. Then he blames the former employee for responding. His pro-war NATO dupe, Anna Kasparian, has caused this with her childish tantrums. Funny, when Gank was begging to come on my show this year, he had no problems with me, which, by the way, like I said before, press X to doubt that Jank was begging to go on Jimmy's show. Yeah, right. What? Pro-war.
I guess technically Jimmy gets more views, maybe, sometimes.
These days, yes, but like the Young Turks definitely, almost certainly.
I mean, there's a reason they let Jimmy go, so I don't see him. Yeah, it'd almost be like he wanted to go on Dave Rubin's show. Why?
Well, no. Jimmy argued. I know we got to wrap this up, but Jimmy argued that that him being there is what got TYT big because it gave them progressive credibility. Whereas having him,
what an egotistical douche, man.
No, I know he's the same guy, and I did a video on this one too. He also said that AOC got her start because of him, which is hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
He said that about Andrew Yang. He says that about everyone. He thinks, like, what a self-absorbed, self-important asshole this guy is. Jimmy, no one. All you're known for outside of your circle is being a conspiracy theorist. You don't actually have any influence or power in society. You have a fucking YouTube channel, you delusional fuck. What power do you think you have?
Well, he thinks he's like this kingmaker where like he can just make or break any sort of progressive, this kind of stuff. It's like he thinks that Anna's a pro-war hack. That's him right there. Timothy.
He's not even completely in line with him. It's very split right now about the whole shitting on AOC thing. And she doesn't even care because she's being elevated regardless. So she's making her way through the rings of the party. She just got put on a committee by Nancy Pelosi. Granted, it's probably not. She's not going to do anything. It's a very symbolic whatever. She's on a committee.
Well, that's why Jimmy's fuming, because he sees the squad now as sellouts, corporate sellouts for the deep state.
I mean, what wouldn't he expect them to do? Like, they have to do their jobs. If they're like, if she's appointed to a committee, is she supposed to say no until they get a pure enough speaker of the House that they can approve?
Yeah, and that's where Jimmy comes in and unironically does the yes meme. Like, that's his view, right? I mean,
well,
Jimmy,
good luck winning anything with that attitude.
Yeah, no, Jimmy, because Timothy made this one too. He's also an Assadist. So like this idea that like, oh, he's anti-war, it's like bullshit. He literally defended Assad, waging a war against his own people. He's as pro-war as it gets. I mean, Jimmy Dore. So like, if people ask me, it's like, are you anti-war? It's like, yes, I am anti-war. I'm against Syria waging a war against their own people. So
yeah, I mean, that is what the Ghoul Gang, the Hawk Gang. Ultimately, it is an anti-war movement. We want to prevent bigger, more damaging, long-lasting wars. We wish for conflicts to be wrapped up as soon as possible, and we're very critical when they're not. But that doesn't mean we shy away from conflict. That just means, look, we want to go about this in the best way, and we you can't possibly. This is why I would respect. Even though she's an idiot, someone like Anna Kasparian over Jimmy Dore, because she's almost seems very uselessly kind of like a pacifist across the board. Like, oh, you can almost get behind that. It's stupid. Don't get me wrong, but there's some principle to it. The Jimmy Dore Tulsi Gabbard rant, it's literally just anti-Americanism and pro-Russian propaganda. That's all it is. At least Anna will admit that there's suffering happening in Syria, that there are people. She just won't lift a finger to save them because she's a bad person.
That's right. She thinks that violence is worse.
Better. It's not impressive to know that there's suffering going on in Syria after 10 years of it. Not impressive at all.
She thinks that intervention is worse.
Literally not knowing that, when the other option is like, oh yeah, no, there's actually Syria's fine and they love Bashar. Yeah, no. That is obviously the worst position.
Yeah, no, it's a total mess. And we will wrap this up now. I've got a debate in about 3.5 hours. But speaking of debates, there is somebody here who still refuses to debate me. That's him right there. I know, right? He blocked me for a third time. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I've been blocked ever since I was tweeting school computer at him. So I can't. Yeah. Anytime people are quote tweeting him, I can't see it, and I don't even feel like going in incognito. He's not even worth it to see it.
No, he's not worth it. But like, I think it's funnier to be blocked 3 times than to be blocked once, personally. Because
like the thing is, he'll probably do it again. He'll probably unblock you, and then you'll tweet at him, "Hey, when's our debate?" And then he'll block you again. Because I think he unblocked you when you were on Bastiat's show with Burns. Like when he basically like, "Oh man, Kevin's relevant again. I'm gonna see his tweets and I'm gonna unblock him." So next time you do like some big debate, he'll unblock you. Guaranteed. This is my prediction. He'll unblock you. You'll tweet at him. When are we debating? And then he'll block you again. There we go.
Yeah. It's like, ooh, he's relevant and stuff, and like, yeah, no, that's pretty funny. He's a goofball.
On this clout, and then I guess he's kind of hoping for you in one of these debates to get crushed, but you don't. And then I bet there's so many bitter tears every debate night from Ian Stevens. He's like, no, you were supposed to lose.
but here's the thing, right? Like I've said this to some buddies and stuff. It's like, statistically speaking, we're probably going to do like 100 debates this year. I'm probably going to lose at least 2 of them. I don't even care at this point. Like that comes with the territory. If I might win all of them, but like even somebody who does debates all the time, we'll lose a debate now and then. It depends. It really depends. I think part of it is what if that person has like 20 times as much research and I've got no time to research because I'm doing debates all the time? Yeah, but then on the other hand, I get followers, I get subs, I get clout either way. So it doesn't even really matter at that sense. Like that's why I don't worry about it anymore. Like in the early days, like I used to do a lot of research for debates, like with the Dylan Burns debate. After that, I'm like, fuck it. Like like people said they're like this guy, man, he's doing all this research, he's got a doc sheet and everything. If that's what the opponent doing research yields, then I don't need to do any research at this point, like nothing more than I would normally do just to run the show. So, I mean, like, I don't know. I might lose a couple debates here and there. Would I lose to Ian? Absolutely not. How would I have lost to Burns, though? That's the other thing. Like, with all the guests that we've had so far, there's like, the only one that I would have a chance of losing against was McCarthyist because he's really smart. But even then, he's still like on my side. We're still more or less on the same side when it comes to foreign policy.
Yeah, it's barely even a debate. Like it's a conversation.
Somebody called it a brainstorming session. So
yeah,
no, Ian Stevens. Yeah, no, Ian Stevens. What I like is like how he's gonna try to like get big in government or whatever, and I'm gonna keep doing this thing. And like the school computer stuff is never gonna go away. Like that's what he's gonna be known for, because like even some of his like former friends and stuff are like, oh yeah, why won't you debate? Or like some of the people that follow him are like, yeah, that is kind of weird. He won't debate you. So
honestly, there are way more, even outside of this community, there are way more Ian Stevens haters than there are fans. I see tweets shitting on Ian all the time. I can't see them because I'm blocked by him, but I see that people are tweeting, like quote tweeting him, and they're like saying, oh, you're a piece of shit, fuck you. And they like get 100, 200 likes on these tweets. And it's like, damn, okay, Ian has a terrible reputation, apparently. I'm not surprised considering what a self-aggrandizing douche he is, but that is what it is. That's what, and the thing is, he's always going to try to run away from people who are, the thing is, in an actual conversation, you would be very respectful of him and be like, okay, you get your time to talk about, make your apologetics for fucking whatever, Turkey. Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
That's the thing.
Yeah, good. They were just telling us today, like, oh yeah, this is how you should run your country. Yeah, good luck being a Turkey apologist in 2021.
Yeah, no, it's a mess. But like the thing is, like even a lot of the people outside of the hockey community, like you mentioned, they see Ian Stevens as a filthy grifter. And I've said before, like even with a lot of people, that it's very hard to tell. But he is a grifter. He is a grifter. They're like, no, dude, like you should give him a chance now. He's grifting as a neocon. I'm like,
I don't see. Already, there's a problem in the way that sentence is phrased. He's grifting as a neo. Why would I want to associate with someone who's grifting as a neocon?
No, that's what it's said to me.
When they get money the other way, they're not an ally anymore. They're not to be trusted or relied on.
I don't think he's necessarily getting money per se. He's just getting
he's getting attention. He's like an attention grifter.
Yeah, which is worse, by the way. Like because I can see the logic in grifting for money, but I mean, grifting for attention is kind of more sad because you can get attention being principled, like because I'm principled and I get attention, and we got the patron gang and everything. But like Jank was bitching the other day. He was like he was on Young Turks and he's like, and this show is powered by you guys. Isn't that awesome? Instead of Raytheon. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, wait, but I'm like, the patron gang is awesome, but like if Raytheon wants to sponsor my shit, that'd be base too. That'd be Hawkpill. Like I would love it if Raytheon, like if we could do like a 1-minute ad for Raytheon at like the beginning of every stream, being like, Raytheon does more good for the world than any charity ever created in history, which is probably true because they actually like get rid of terrorists and stuff. That'd be pretty based. And then it's like, we'd have like a Chiron here, like. This show is sponsored by Raytheon. It's like, but the thing is, like, you couldn't even say we were selling out because, like, from day one, I've been a fan of Raytheon. So, it's like
Raytheon wouldn't touch the Young Turks with a 100-foot pole. Like,
can you imagine
to have any kind of backing like that?
Can you imagine, like, the only people that will fund the Young Turks are literally the Qatari government. That's where they'll get their funding from. But then you'll have Raytheon, and he's like, oh, and he also made fun of CNN for being sponsored by. He's like, sponsored by Raytheon. And it's like, wait, I don't think I've ever seen a Raytheon commercial on CNN. But as well, he's like, also sponsored by Johnson and Johnson and Walmart. It's like, wait, but like Walmart's good. Like Walmart lowers the cost of living for like a ton of people. Can you imagine if there was no Walmart? Like for me, for example, the local grocery stores, their local grocery stores literally charge 10 Canadian dollars for a can of salmon. And if I go to Walmart, I can get them for a third the price. So I just stock up on crap at Walmart. And it's like, oh, but then people are like woke still. They're like, oh, but did you know that like Walmart has like bad business practices? It's like, wait, I'm pretty sure charging $10 for a small can of salmon is a worse business practice than, oh, you just pay people the same rate as like where it would be competitive anywhere else. So pathetic. Like, I don't know, maybe that's a hot take, but like I defend Walmart. But
there's always going to be internal issues. There's avenues to go to report that. If you really feel like you're being mistreated, there are hotlines for that. But Jank, of course, Jank doesn't get that. Jank is rich as fuck. Do you think Jank goes to Walmart?
Jank has $3 million. No, this is the thing that I want people to understand right here, because people have accused me of being astroturfed and accused me of being a grifter and all this kind of crap and a sellout. Like I was accused of being a sellout by some Jimmy Dore fans. They're like, you're selling out to the military-industrial complex. It's like, these guys, Jimmy's made a lot of money. He's gotten $2 million to parrot Russian talking points. Jank's got a $3 million net worth last I checked. These people are freaking loaded, and yet they constantly send out their emails. I know because I'm still on their mailing list for the lulz so that I could see what they're up to. They're constantly begging for donations. Like Young Turks is always like, we missed the goal. We missed the mark for this month. We're $200,000 behind and all this kind of crap. And it's like, they fired. This is the thing that's so stupid about it. They got $20 million in I guess it was financing or whatever the hell. As soon as they got that, they fired most of their shows. Like they used to have What the Flick, which was the only good show that they ever had, where they would do film review and some of it was cool. They fired those guys. They're like, yeah, we don't want you. And they said, they're like, we want to focus on progressive politics. That's why we're firing everything that's not the main show. And it's like, yeah, but you guys just got $20 million. It's like, I think of that like in contrast to me. Like once I have more time and once like the patron gang is even bigger and whatnot, I want to do music reviews and film reviews too on the side. Like that's the sort of thing that I want to do, like as a side project, because I'm interested in all that kind of stuff. And then eventually, like down the road, like in 10 years, 15 years or whatever, hopefully we'll have like number of like, you know, producers and stuff and everything here and whatnot. And we'll have like separate shows that just focus on specific regions in the world. Like, I mean, it'd be a dream if like I could have like a crew that's like specifically focused on like Iran and like news with that, and like a crew that's focused on Russia and news with that. And like I would do personally the one on North Korea and head that. That'd be dope. Whereas Young Turks are like, oh, we cashed in big. Let's like fire most of our departments now. So they're obviously just in it for the money at this point. There's no way they're not. There's no way they're not. And yet it's these fucking losers in the progressive side. They constantly accuse myself and all the Hawks of being grifty. It's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, everyone in our community is working class. Like, there's no one in our community who's like, you know, in Beverly Hills with our new mansion and we got the Raytheon check. No,
like Vosh.
We don't have shit, man. We're normal working people.
Vosh is a Beverly Hills boy who makes six figures to tell communists how they need to burn the system down and then takes their money. Like, that's the thing. It's like, I don't even care. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be making that money. Apparently there's a market for it. He's filling a demand in the market. You know, that's the thing about capitalism. That's what's funny about it. And like, he'll say straight up, like, oh yeah, you know, I have a pretty good living standard and everything now, and like he still gets donations and stuff. And now, is he grifty? It depends. If he was a true grifter, he wouldn't have endorsed Biden. He would have done the Jimmy route, I think, because he gave me even more money now. But Ian Stevens is a grifter.
It's almost like a bit of self-awareness, though. It's like he realizes, all this rhetoric of burn down the system. He realizes, wait, if there's no system, where does all my money go? Oh wait, I better preserve some parts of the system. Hold on, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll wrap up the stream now, but if you had any sort of closing remarks or whatever, feel free.
No, just end it, or else we're gonna go another hour.
Yeah. So basically, thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe. I do daily premieres and daily videos, or daily streams rather. Except today we got 2 streams because of all the chaos in the Capitol instead of the premiere. And if you want to support what I do, you can check me out over on Patreon, Ko-Fi, and PayPal if you want to send me a tip. I'm also on Facebook and Twitch. Where can the people follow you, Spooky Nukies?
On Twitter, I'm just at Spooky Nukies, and on YouTube, it's just Spooky Nukies. So that's really the only 2 places I'm at. And sorry, people, I know I haven't been that active lately. I'm just working on other things, but I do try to come on here when I can and comment on Twitter when I can. Obviously, today when there's important things happening, I'll try to be out there for that. But no. Good luck with your debate. I have no doubt you're going to wipe the floor with whoever this is. Because defending Tulsi Gabbard at this point is a very unenviable position, shall we say.
Well, but he also defends Iran, so there's that. So.
Oh, well, I expect nothing less.
Yeah, and Natalie is here. Says Kevin is like 7-0 right now. It's glorious. Yeah, and it's like, and tomorrow will be 8-0. So. Yeah.
Savage.
Yeah, so that's it. And then like in 6 months we'll be like 48-0, whatever. Yeah, so thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the debate in a few hours. Stay based.